Hello, this is Graham Plaster, CEO of the Intelligence Community Inc., and also Vice President for National Security and Intelligence at TDX International, an Alaska Native corporation that does a lot of interesting defense and intelligence contracts with the federal government. And I'm here with Amit Kumar, the founder and CEO of Dragonfruit AI. He's a serial entrepreneur who sold his first company to Yahoo and the second to NerdWallet, and he ran a $150 million business for Yahoo as well. And we're here to talk about Amit's company that has some really interesting new technology that has applicability within the intelligence community, and perhaps also for some solutions around COVID-19. So we're going to do a little bit of a demo and look at some of his slides, but mostly we're just going to have a casual conversation about his ideas and the most recent news around his current company. So with that, Amit, could you tell us a little bit about your current company, the history, about why you started it, and maybe what you've done so far and your funding rounds?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thanks so much for the invitation, Graham. We're all working from home, and so we all have interesting backgrounds in the back here. Wanted to tell you more about the company, of course. But certainly, you mentioned COVID. Certainly, we think that there's a lot of work that all of us have to do to help get us through this crisis. And so definitely want to chat about that as well. Dragonfruit started last year. We've been building up the product the last couple of years, but we formally incorporated last year. And we started with a bang. We raised about $5 million in funding right up front. We think that's because of the power of the idea, which is to bring together some of the new high technologies that are coming in terms of AI, machine learning, in terms of cloud, and apply that to a lot of physical security kind of use cases. Obviously, there's so much hype around both of these, cloud and AI, that it's hard to distinguish, what's marketing and what's real. Let your viewers or listeners make a call on that based on the demo that we'll be showing later. And the basic idea is to think about all of the use cases that we do as physical security operators and how to make them go 10x faster. Our approach hasn't been what are the new things we can do, although that's part of it. Our approach has been what are the existing users that we have and how can they become 10x faster. So for instance, if you have your real-time monitoring, how can that be faster? You have your forensic investigations, how can that be faster? And as part of that, certain new things become possible that you might not even have thought of doing, and certainly want to talk about some of them. But in general, our goal was to deploy all of this new tech that is coming up to existing use cases so they can be done faster.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Let's go ahead and jump into the demo portion just so we have some things to chew on and talk about. Are you able to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to actually do a little bit of back and forth. I'm going to start with the hardcore AI demo, just show you a glimmer of that, and then switch back to the product that we're building and put them in context. So okay. The quick demo I wanted to start off with was, here's, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yeah.
Great. So here you can see a standard sort of video feed. You have a college building in the background. You have a person walking by. You have cars in the intersection. And this happens all the time. You have an incident, and this could be a corner at a school campus, or it could be from a defense perspective, it could be a perimeter, it could be a forward operating base, it could be wherever you have your sources from. And you might have hours and hours of this footage, and you have maybe an incident that you're trying to investigate. Mm-hmm. You heard about someone in a red shirt that got hit by a bus, and you want to go reach out and figure that out. Or you just want to see what happened, right? Like just get some situation awareness based on the last few hours of activity. And so in the typical case, you're sort of going back and forth, maybe speeding up, pausing, rewinding, and trying to see what's going on. And what we have been able to do is basically build a video, something like this, out of those hours of footage. what you're seeing here is there's a lot of activity, but all of this activity did not happen at a specific point in time.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is we're overlaying all the different things that happen at different periods of time. So this person was walking at like 4:23 p.m. This couple at 4:30 p.m. This guy was walking at 3:30 p.m. And we overlaid all of those in the same video, essentially squeezing. Our company is called Dragonfruit, so we call this the Dragonfruit squeeze. We're squeezing all the juicy parts of the video into one place.
I like it.
And so you can actually, yeah, thanks. We can actually go look at a lot of this information very, very quickly. But it's not just squeezing it in with abandon. You can actually go do filters. So you can say, actually, don't show me like 100 things at once. Show me only 5 things at once. And in fact, only show me people. So then what you can do is you can create a video like this, where I'm only showing you 5 people. I'm only showing you their tracks. And then using that, I'm able to figure out the person I was looking for. So you see this person at 3:30, 2:45, and now you have that guy in the red shirt that you're able to identify. When you double click on that person, then you're going to be able to go and see that particular video. And it might have like tons of cars and tons of people around, but you've now identified the specific person that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a quick view of the kind of capability that you can bring in using AI. But we deliver this all in the cloud. So let me show you. Actually, you know what?
Before you switch over, can I ask a couple questions about this?
Yes, please.
So, so this is an example of like a video, obviously after the fact, that you've kind of forensically gone back in and compacted the whole 3-hour video or something into a couple minutes, right? Into a minute or two. So how long does it take your AI to render this type of product?
Yeah, good question. So it depends a lot, obviously, on the number of objects. So for example, if you took a stadium or like a really busy intersection, the number of objects that you have to process is going to be huge. Yeah. But the average that we suggest right now is for about an hour of footage, you need 10 minutes of processing. So if you have, let's say, 10 hours of a video, you just like let it run, and it doesn't, it's not a linear scaling. About a day, assuming sort of regular traffic kind of a thing, a couple of hours, let's say. Once that is done, then the whole thing is available for filtering, right? Yep. And the filtering is pretty much instantaneous. So once the processing is done, then you can say, okay, show me people with red shirts, show me people with red shirts, and show me trucks, show me school buses and people, and all of that happens in near real time. So there's an initial processing time, and again, since it's all in the cloud, it really depends on how what tier you buy from us. So if you buy a super premium tier, we can put many more GPUs to work, for example, in the cloud. Then obviously that time comes down dramatically depending on what your users are.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is obviously because you're working in the cloud, you have a lot more compute available if you can afford it, right? You could move this a lot faster. That's interesting. And obviously, we like to speculate in our community about what the future might look like with quantum. So obviously, we're nowhere close to that. But as we create these types of capabilities, someday we might be able to render the results pretty quickly. So the other question was.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you decide what simultaneous looks like? Let's say you have a 3-hour video to compile into a couple minutes, or a 24-hour video to compile into a couple minutes. Like, what's the duration of the compilation video determined by?
Yeah, that is actually an excellent question. It's actually a deep question that I don't get a lot. The thing that you have to optimize for is not just the visuals, but actually cognitive load. In other words, if let's say I had like a lot of people who came into the view, let's say only for a few seconds, right? Mm-hmm. And if I just showed you like 15 people who moved around for 5 seconds each or 2 seconds each, as an operator, you'll have too much of a cognitive overload, like people coming in, back, going out, and you won't be able to process it. So actually, we do a lot of work in showing you some people moving longer, some people moving sort of shorter duration. So as an operator, you can process the information quite fast. So there's a whole sub work or sub piece of work in how do you pick the right things to show, when do you show them, optimize for who's actually looking at this stuff, not just adding stuff willy-nilly.
Yeah, making the information useful. Like we talk in the intelligence community about making, providing information that's actionable, actionable intelligence. And if the things are moving too fast on the screen, if it's compacted down to such a difficult image to understand, then you can't do it. But if the AI is good, then it's going to give you, the operator, like you said, the ability to really grasp a large amount of time in a short amount of time. And one of the things you and I talked about before is the idea of being able to analyze, say, a public space for COVID-19, traffic, right? So if you had an area that, let's say, a security camera inside a Home Depot or a grocery store, and you're trying to figure out how many people you could actually have in there and maintain 6-foot distance from each other. And so for the next outbreak, you're like, let's put this kind of analysis tool on and let's review it, because we have these assumptions about how many people can be in a space, but those assumptions might be inaccurate. So this type of tool would give you a much more accurate understanding of how people are flowing through the space, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad you brought it up. So let me give you a few examples of how we are seeing this and the conversations we're having with different kinds of customers. So we have the second largest employer in the country. They have warehouses, and there have been cases where they have to, someone was diagnosed with COVID, right? And it's an essential service. You have to have warehouse workers. But now you want to go back and say, who did this person come in contact with, right? So can you do rapid contact tracing and be able to go notify people who might have been nearby? Everyone's trying to maintain the distance, but if you can do that, then you're increasing sort of public health and improving your own efficiency as a private corporation. Mm-hmm. So certainly contact tracing, we have conversations going on. Another conversation going on in Hawaii, where there is sort of drones and sort of drone deployments to monitor beach areas, right? Because you're trying to make sure that people are not clustering in the beaches. Now, how do you do that efficiently? Like, do you send out your patrol and go drive around the entire? You can. With a drone, what you can do then is use our system on the back end. As the video is coming in, you're doing the analysis to figure out if there are people, so you can send someone out. And more importantly, even if there are people, are they sort of far apart, right? And you can do that kind of analytics once you have the system. One of the big things that, so that's another example. One thing that we haven't quite seen yet, and we feel that will come in the next couple of months, is people are going to be interested in making sure people are wearing masks, right? So we're just starting to talk about masks a lot, but in certain public spaces, in a couple of months from now, if you have to, as a public service, as law enforcement or as a city or even in intelligence, be able to say, okay, in this area, people are not wearing masks, so we should have like a cop around there just to make sure that people are doing the right thing. This is not happening right now. We are still a couple of months away from this becoming a big thing as the curves start flattening. And so we are prepared for that because we're creating models to be able to do that. This is, by the way, one of the big reasons we decided to be on the cloud, because once you have all the data flowing into the cloud, the ability to create a new AI filter, be able to say, show me all the people not wearing masks in the last 3 hours, and take those snapshots and be able to do something with it. Or if you have thermal cameras, and be able to say, show me a composite of all the people with high temperature, and now show me the real camera footage for them so we can go do contact tracing. All of these things are always possible. Like we've always been able to do this in physical security. It has always been, okay, let's buy the stuff, move it down, install it, run it. Okay, a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, you have it up and running. What we have done is switched the game where if you can get the data up to the cloud, we'll talk about how in a second, then all of these things can be built and deployed in record time.
Now, have you already thought about the possibility of, let's say you have a static place like this that you're monitoring, and you have a camera, obviously it's a sensor, but you could potentially embed other types of sensors across the location, like touch points or triggers that would then be integrated into the video in some way. I'm thinking like if the pole in this picture had some sort of touch sensor on it that was integrated into the camera, so that anytime someone leaned a hand up against the pole, then you knew how many times it was touched in the middle of the day across, so you could kind of tabulate that. Or, there's much better examples than that, I'm sure, but have you thought about other sensors to integrate?
Yeah, sensor fusion is a big focus area for us. For example, in some cases, we don't have a deployment for this yet. To be fair, but we are working with a potential deployment with ShotSpotter. So you have the where gunshots get registered, and then you can sort of overlay that data with our system. We already have a partner who can connect with ATM systems, for example, and have the ATM information come in as a secondary feed, and then you can look at these feeds together to be able to do intel. And I think some of the things I'm going to show in my slides, I might point to that as well.
Have you run this software on any high definition video?
Yeah, so in fact, this particular, I lowered the resolution so I could show it well, but we actually do this processing on HD, 4K, even video. And obviously in those cases, we can identify people and things much more precisely. So, and then be able to zoom in and be able to make identification. So yeah, now the higher the resolution is, the more processing power is needed.
Right.
So again, it depends on the customer. If they have the ability to pay for it, then yes, you can do really interesting things. But it's a sliding scale. It depends on where the deployment is. If it happens sort of behind 5 layers of security, you might have the budget to be able to go do things at a much higher resolution.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of the compute doesn't have to happen until after you've recorded it. So let's say you had to record a lot of HD video from a drone, let's say maybe like a tethered drone that had a high bandwidth to get the data down to something on the ground. And then you were able to store that video and then process it. As long as you had enough compute available, you could process 4K video, which would be able to gather a lot of the facial characteristics and things like that.
Exactly. In fact, the way we think about this, actually, this might be a good segue into some of the slides I wanted to show you. So the way we think about this whole solution is in 3 parts, right?
Okay.
One is importing the data. The second is storing in the cloud. And the third is investigation, right? So to your point, where the data comes from depends really on the scenario. So if you have a traditional deployment, physical security deployment where you have a VMS system, it could be a genetic or a high vision, which probably not in the case of intelligence community, but you have a milestone. And so that's your more traditional footage coming in. But then you might have one-off camera sources. To your point about a tethered drone, right? It is a first-class data input system. So you have video coming in all the time from it, but it's not part of a VMS system, no problem. And in some cases, it might be uploaded video. You have some smartphone footage where that's the only source of truth that is available. And so all of this data comes in a uniform way into the system. We have plugins for various systems to do that. And then there's a bunch of AI that we have built on how do you move it up to the cloud. I'll talk about that in a second. Once it's in the cloud, it's secure, scalable, and compliant. So the idea around this what we call the bandwidth-aware uploader is that in many situations where you might be operating in a place where the bandwidth is spotty, right, or the bandwidth keeps going up and down, or like you have loss of connectivity, we built our uploader in a way that it knows what's going on with your compute, how many CPUs you have, GPU you have, storage, all of that stuff, and then be able to intelligently downsample or move the data at a different time of day. So you're recording in the day, but in the nighttime, we upload it so that you have bandwidth available, what have you. And we use AI to optimize this. Just to give you an example, if you have a camera pointed to a parking lot, right? We all know that the cars and the people are more important, but the trees in the background, less important, right? So in those cases, we can downsample just the trees and bushes and send high resolution video for the rest of it. So you're reducing the bandwidth impact, right? And be able to look at that. On the other hand, if you're actually doing surveillance of a perimeter where people might be camouflaged, right? So you might actually want high resolution video for the trees and bushes. Like that's exactly where you want your attention to be.
Yeah.
And so in those cases, we don't do that. So there's a lot of intelligence there. And once you move it, of course, there's a bunch of work that we've done on chain of custody, for example, making sure that you know exactly what happened to the video as it moved up, and then get stored. We were talking about cloud, but cloud is really a shortcut or a phrase for us. It could be GovCloud, it could be your own private installation. So if you have like a server somewhere, that's basically the cloud for us. So we can have it run in those kind of systems. And when you have all of this data coming in, so from your drones, let's say, or from your VMS systems, so one-off videos, what we have really focused on is creating a user experience that you're seeing here, where all of the stuff is in one place, right? So you don't have to go and context switch. One account, you upload all of the video there. It's on the cloud, so it's scalable. So you're not worried about, only have 2 terabytes of space on this hardware. So let me pick and choose what I put in there. Basically infinitely scalable. So you can dump in as much video as you want. The Boston Marathon bombing comes to mind, where you literally had hundreds of people with little video camera footage, right? So you can basically create a workspace and upload all of that video together and then be able to view it. And of course, you can view it across locations, right? So if you have visibility into public squares, let's say in a COVID scenario, so you have a camera that you're really focused on in Times Square, another in Union Square in San Francisco, another in the middle of Houston. You can bring all of them in and say, show me a view of just those cameras across locations, right? So we are used to having the ability to see a subset of cameras in a physical location, right? Like you have 100 cameras, I want to see only 4 of them. Sure, we do that all the time. But what if you wanted to have it across locations and be able to see them together? That's kind of one of the capabilities that we are bringing together when you have disparate sources coming in. And the last thing I just wanted to flash for you guys was an ability to do investigations, right? That's when it comes down to, like, in terms of forensic investigations. You have a little clip from one camera phone footage and another 1 hour chunk from the parking lot camera, another hour from the fence that you were sort of investigating someone climbing it. And you put it all together in one workspace, be able to view it very, very quickly because it's streaming from the cloud. Like there's no issue with like, oh, my computer is getting slow because videos are playing, right? It's all happening on the cloud, and then be able to really get to investigations faster using tools like I showed in the beginning. In some sense, like the tools that I showed you, the compression, the summarization of video is just one part of the whole system. Overall, managing all of this data in one place, I think, is an equally, if not more important part of the whole system.
Have you thought about any use cases for body cams and dash cams?
Yeah, so we talked with a few police departments here in the Bay Area, and they do have use cases. So for example, you have to store all of this body cam footage on the cloud, and most of the current solutions charge an arm and a leg, right? So they try to sort of fleece you, just because you're a law enforcement, you have sometimes money for it. We actually do offloading of all of that for long-term retention, things like that. There are cases where you really have custom requirements. So in some jurisdictions, you have to be able to give the video, the body cam footage to the public when they need it, but then you have to redact it. Like you have to blur out spaces except for the police officers' faces and so on. So we have tools for doing that kind of stuff. That is in beta. It's not part of the product yet, but we have use cases where we're working on how do you create a workflow, the same investigative workflow. In fact, the one slide I didn't show is you can actually publish an investigative report, different versions of it. Like you can send one with some access control to the citizen, right, who wants to see a specific clip, and that's all they see. And you don't have to create a thumb drive. You don't have to mail it out. It's just like they get a URL. But the internal report might have way more data. The one that you send to press might have a different sort of aspect of it. So all of that management in terms of taking, let's say, the body cam footage, being able to process it, store it, squeeze it, right? Like instead of like nothing happening, and now you only want to focus on this time and just show me the important things there. Be able to search it by license plate numbers, by even transcripts. Like if you said something in the video and you're trying to search for it, all of that becomes really possible with the system.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've seen AI run on home video and stuff like that to try to compress video in the past. But what's interesting to me is the idea of whether it's body cam or dash cam, or some sort of body cam or camera that's taken into the battlefield, is the ability to take massive amounts of video, say over hours and hours and days and months, and then compress it down to something which is meaningful and useful, and then logging that as lessons learned from the experience, right?
Yep.
So we have right now for a long time in the military, we've had a tradition of filling out forms and writing reports at the end of every mission and deployment as lessons learned, and we have databases of lessons learned. Now, if you were to incorporate other sensors, whether it's video or audio, into that, and then run AI on that to compress it down to something that's useful, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean they say, right, picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
You can flip that, and you can say that a given picture, you have 1,000 points of interesting information embedded in there. And if you don't have a system that can take a picture, a piece of video, and extract that information and make it searchable and available, you're basically losing a lot of useful information that could potentially be actionable, right? So in some sense, going from a report to a video, if you can process that video, you might get so many more insights.
Yeah.
There might be, when you have, for example, the police case, we were talking to some police departments about this, which is, you have a cop that's sort of walking the street, and they might not notice that the car went by with a license plate that was, there was a bolo on it. So how would you do that, right? Like you can't process it all the time, but the computer can, right? So if you have a processing system always running on whatever video footage is coming into the system, just be on the lookout, right? Yep. Then you can actually do that. And so active, proactive, or sort of passive. You might not get a real-time alert because the body cam footage gets uploaded in the night. But if you have it, you might have a picture of a person sitting inside the car, and then be able to do this. So I think a lot of people fixate on the real-time aspect of AI, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. And it is completely legit. Like if you have a fence being crossed, you want to know in real time, so you can dispatch someone, a security guard, for example. But there's way more that you can do on the forensic side that I think people are not thinking about yet, which we hope to change.
Mm. Yeah, and I think with COVID-19, assuming and hoping that we can get over the curve quickly and kind of see things coming back towards normalcy, we'll still have a lot of time to think about how we want to prepare adequately for any other similar pandemics. And we'll be looking at tools that can help us to be, forensically looking at public spaces or public interactions in ways that give us intelligence on how to change our policies or even our organizations. So do you have other slides that you wanted to go over?
No, I think that's it. I wanted to keep it short. So, just wanted to give you some sense of the notion around having data coming in from various sources in one place so you can manage it, having it all in the cloud, whether it be Gov Cloud or your sort of, private cloud, and then be able to analyze it quickly and efficiently. Summarization is one tool, but as I said before, having filters and maybe even custom filters for a specific user in the intelligence community. They might say, hey, we are looking for people who are wearing, wearing a mask, right? That is COVID implications on the positive side, but might have negative implications in other sides, right? Which is show me people who are wearing a mask, trying to do some sort of recon and just highlight that so we can trace them back to the car that they came out of and be able to then zoom in on the car. And so the capabilities really come in the service of the use cases, which we can help either out of the box or custom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good place for us to leave off the conversation for now, actually. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank you, Amit. And I'll just repeat for everybody who's getting to listen. He's the founder and CEO of Dragonfruit AI. Check out Dragonfruit AI. We'll leave a link to the company in the notes. And he's a serial entrepreneur who sold his first company to Yahoo and the second to NerdWallet. And he's run a $150 million business for Yahoo as well. And I'm just excited to know more about Dragonfruit. So thanks a lot, Amit, for coming on this interview.
And thank you so much, Grant, for the invitation. I look forward to more of these.
Okay, great.